Okay, so the question that a lot of people wrote me about today when I posted this, when I posted the graphic, was what a goalie should be asking a new team. Okay, and and I know we've got a lot of people on here who are making some switches, like Joel Rose. You guys just moved from right the Carolinas up to Rochester, right, and up to New York, and I Carrie Ann. You guys are looking for a team, and that was a great post, by the way, in the group. Wondering like who's around your area and who has experience with some of those clubs. Um, one thing that I found last night I wasn't really aware of was like U.S. Lacrosse has a pretty good listing of clubs. Okay, but it's one thing to list clubs and say like, oh, this is a community club or this is an elite club or whatever. But then it's also time to find out like what is that club going to do for your goalie at your goalie's stage of development. Okay, and I think that's what's really important here is that you know so this um the 15 minutes I'm going to give to this topic is not about giving you permission to be a jerk and hope that every program is going to be run by someone like me. Okay, because that's probably not going to happen. And even like I can speak from experience when I was involved briefly with a club. Okay, I can quickly tell you that even if the head of your program is a well-educated lacrosse goalie coach, they will succumb to the demands of the club in other areas, right? So every club has the certain resources, time, energy, and money, and even the most well-intentioned people who want to help the goalies may not have the time with which to help the goalies. Okay, so I'm not giving you permission to just kind of bitch and moan and complain about the clubs that you've got because as parents of athletes need to take 100% responsibility for their development, right? Because some goalie somewhere is doing more with less and they're going to make their athletic dreams come true. So it's up to you. So what's really important is that programs can only do so much with the resources that they have. However, you are paying for a service. Now, based on your resources, time, energy, money, um, this last year, I had just to give some background. I worked with um, I worked with a family, tons of resources, very elite goalie, traveling a long, 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 long way to go play with a better club. Got kind of screwed over by said club. Um, because one of the things that you do run into is you're going to run into coaches that coach the club but also coach the high school, right? And so they're kind of thinking about their team in the background, and selfishly. And what's interesting is like had this book. I've had this book for a while. This is a very famous book by H.A. Dorfman, Coaching the Mental Game. I'm working on a similar book, but I was reading actually the topic on coaches and coaches who are selfish, and so everybody would love to have a coach like John Wooden, those days are gone. But the idea is that there's a lot of stuff to navigate here. But for my Lacrosse Goalie University members, for my coaching members who are part of our Lacrosse Goalie University forum and stuff, I've got a massive section on this. I'm going to cover some of the questions but I can't cover them all because I go through a lot of questions. And one of the questions that came up today to me was like, "Hey, can you cover some of the answers you'd hope to hear?" All right. So I'm going to do that, but I will tell you that one of the things that you have to be aware of is that coaches are trying to build programs, and programs that have better athletes win. And every one of the questions that comes up with every parent that I ever talk to is when they think about a program is that they'll immediately go like, "Oh, well, that club got trounced last summer at such and such tournament, or that club did really well." Okay, now as a goalie, you guys all know that I believe one of the best the best teams that your goalie can be on is one of the worst teams. And now there is a limit to that. Like if your team is horrible and the coaches are horrible and they don't know anything, that's probably that's a big mental ask of your goalie, right? Like I want goalies to go get lacrosse by the pound and play a lot and see a lot of balls and see a lot of game experience. But if your team is full, like has not been coached at all, that can put a goalie in a position where they feel like they're just getting shelled. And if your goalie is in that situation, by the way, you just got to pad them up, right, so that they can survive it. But the idea is that we don't want to put a goalie in too much of an extreme situation where they're getting shelled and getting beat up on. But the opposite is also true. One of the conversations that I have with every elite goalie that I work with, if they are on an elite club and the defense is awesome and they're behind like, 5 defensive, like all Americans, I don't really want my goalie on that team because they're not getting a lot of work. They're not getting a lot of shots. They're not having to understand how to direct the defense because kind of maybe everybody knows where to go. So being somewhere between those two extremes is going to be pretty good. Okay. But this past year, I've had goalies looking for clubs in obscure areas. I've had parents driving like ungodly hours, and I'm not a fan of that because I also believe as parents, um, unless you've got like your financial wealth building situation completely handled, there's an opportunity cost. So for every hour you're in the car, that's another hour you could be building a business or setting up your family for life. Okay, so I'm not the type of coach that says, "Oh yeah, just put all those dollars in the gas tank," years ago I had a dad who actually drove himself off the road sleeping, falling asleep at the wheel. This was a hockey kid. This wasn't a lacrosse kid, but that shit happens, right? And I don't want that happening to you. So you've got to play that by ear. So, um, but you are paying for a service, in my opinion. And I do believe that in the age of information, ignorance is a choice, and that goes for lacrosse goaltending, goes for anything. Okay, so um, coaches are building programs. Coaches will lie occasionally. You've got to be so if you can talk to other people around said program. Um, and Joel, you're jumping the gun. I'm totally going to cover this. You also got to be careful of what questions you ask, because sometimes coaches are going to think by asking too many questions that you're going to be a pain in the ass parent. We don't want that. So let's cover this one. Joel Rose writes this one. And so just for some backstory, Joel Rose like moved from the Carolinas to Rochester. Colton, who's a very good goalie, is now in an area where there's good goalies. Okay. So Joel writes, in fairness, it's very difficult to move to a new market and ask a lot of questions. Moving to a hotbed has made it difficult to unseat an existing goalie. While we have been offered 2 positions, both are second string. His trial performance got him in, quote unquote, in, but it's not like they had film or endorsements from his past coaches. It's hard to put them in a position to unseat someone in a 90-minute tryout when they have years of experience with the kids with whom they have relationships. Totally true. And that totally covers like the first questions that I had here. Is that, the only answer is for your goalie to be so damn good they have to pick you. Okay. But that being said, one thing I encourage all my goalies to do is, a lot of families think like, oh, well, we're going to wait on like the recruiting video until like we're ready to go for colleges. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, don't do that. Okay. One, I want you to put a video together to kind of keep your goalie motivated. I have a goalie. Like, this blew my mind this year. I'm not working with him currently. If you're listening, you know who you are. But I had a family this year where their goalie's like high school age, decent goalie. And they're a family where there's like no social media in the house. The kids barely have phones. So they're not doing any video. Well, just like for Joel here, when you move, it would be really nice to have a video to be able to kind of put in. It's like you're getting recruited to play on this club team, right? And yes, you have to, yeah, it's hard to unseat a kid in 90 minutes, but if you have a recruiting video ready to go and the coaches go, dang, that's what we've come to in youth sports. All right. And so people go like, oh, well, that sucks. Youth sports should be fun. True, but it's not always. So like, as you're just going through these stepping stones, what do you choose to do? And this is one of those things that can help you in that case. So we're going to ask questions. Okay. Now I know for a kid like Colton, he'll probably play like half a season on the B team, and the coaches will be like, dang, right? And then, but I'm not giving anybody permission to play the, oh, well, that goalie's been here for a while and the coach is friends with the goalie's dad, like whatever. Don't fall into that trap. The bottom line is you're just trying to get your goalie so damn good they have to pick you. That is always the answer. Okay, that is always the answer. And if and I've said this before, rather unceremoniously, the idea that if you think you're playing politics, your goalie's not good enough. All right. Like who has to get stuck in politics traps is goalies that aren't good enough. Why? Because goalies that are really, really good, they're that's the goal. So you want to be that kid. Okay. Um, so but some simple questions you can ask a club is like, okay, how many goalies do you currently have on your team and what are their ages? Right. So what you'll notice with a lot of these questions is that there's a qualifier at the end. Not, hey, how many goalies you got? Oh, we got 2 goalies. Oh, okay, that sounds good. No, how old are they? How long have they been playing with you? Are they going to graduate next year or are they going to move on? Um, um, and So I show Leslie this question. The team he didn't make had a goalie dad coach. All right, time to get on the horse, Colton. Let's go, buddy. Let's make it work, right? Because this is only going to make you a better goalie. Okay. By the way, let me just share a quick story. So, a number of years ago, when lacrosse recruiting got really, really weird, like I had an athlete get basically a Division I scholarship offer, not a goalie. This is an attackman in grade 9. Okay, grade 9. And there was a story that came out of, I can't remember what school it was, but there was a face-off guy, like a Fogo, who got recruited off the JV of a prep school. Okay, so prep school's stacked. The varsity has a Fogo. The JV had a Fogo. The JV Fogo got recruited. Okay, so just so you know, like if you're in a place where there's a lot of good goalies, well, even if you're the third goalie, doesn't mean that you're not going to have your college dreams come true, right? It just depends on how deep it is, and it depends on how good the cream is, right? We don't want to be the cream of the crap, we want to be the cream of the cream, right? So again, even if you're on the B team in an area where there's other goalies, you can get recruited being that B goalie because coaches will like you're going to get it elsewhere. You've got to find a way to make it work elsewhere, like recruiting tapes, going to camps, going to clinics, things like that. All right. So uh, asking club coaches like, okay, of those goalies, are they going to be around? Are they graduating? Are they, how many goalies are trying out? This is one that bit a dad this year of a female goalie that I'd work with. They made a big commitment to another club. The club said, we have 2 goalies. His goalie was better than both those goalies. When they finally got there was actually a third goalie that was added to the mix from another club that they didn't know anything about. So, and you know what, that I give coaches permission to do that. Right. And in that case, it was like the coach is involved with the high school, yada, yada, that sort of thing. Listen, you just got to be so damn good. They got to pick you, but sometimes you're still so damn good. They may not pick you anyway. And so, but that's where there's other means with which to kind of make this work. Is there cost for my goalie to try out? If there's a lot of goalies, you're going to pay. If there's no goalies, the coach would be like, oh my God, we're so happy to have you. Right. That sort of thing. Okay. So if your goalie is going into a situation where there's more than one goalie, right? Like your goalie, is one, and then there's going to be another one or more. The idea there is asking like, well, what's the philosophy? Are you splitting time evenly? And we heard stories this year of like a 10-year-old goalie getting benched by a coach for another goalie. That shouldn't happen, right? Especially at that age. So if you've got a young goalie, right, and you're going into a club, they split in time. What's your philosophy there? Because I want to know. Like, I want to be paying for half games at least. Right. I don't want some coach being a jerk and sitting my kid, male or female, because they let in a couple bad goals at U12. Right. But even a high school goalie, same thing. Coach, what's your philosophy? Some coaches will say like, all right, listen, we're going to play halves, but if one goalie's got the hot hand and we're in the last quarter, I'm going to put that goalie in. So then you're playing that game. Like, okay, do you want to start? Do you want to finish? All right. I want my goalies just to play. So I want my goalie to just go start. Like some goalies are like, oh, I don't like to start. You know, no, you kind of always want to be pushing to start because if the other goalie, if you lose, you're always in a position to kind of look like the better of the two goalies. Okay. Um, when I graduated high school, I got to play the East West Prep School All Star game. Um, and I started the first half. I let in like 2 or 3 goals the first half. And we were leading like I don't know 7-2, 7-3, and the second half goalie that played for our team let in like a dozen goals. So much so that people were yelling from the stands to put me back in, which was kind of weird. It was an all-star game, it's no big deal. But I had proved my point as the goalie, right? So put your goalie in this situation. But I want to know from a coach's standpoint, what are you doing? Even if it's crap, if my goalie's having a bad day, are you going to play him or are you going to pull him? I just want to know what your philosophy is. Okay. Um, uh, if your goalie is the starter, like let's say your goalie starts in the second half, does your goalie have an opportunity to play? Does your goalie have the opportunity to play out in a different position? I hate seeing goalies sitting on a bench. Even if you're on the most elite team and you're splitting times with another elite goalie, I want my goalie to take some runs in the second half, like or whatever half they're not playing. Long stick midi, face off guy, defensive midfield, some attack, like whatever. Like, do you have that? Now, if a team is like super deep, you're probably not going to get that opportunity. But if your team is like most club teams, they're running like 16 guys or whatever, you're probably going to get that chance, right? I want that goalie, even as much as my goalie may love the position, I want them out in the field, right? To get some reps. Okay, a couple questions here. David Amenhauser writes, having videos is also beneficial because some showcases have had virtual tryouts due to COVID, and the video can be used to supplement the virtual tryout. That's fantastic, David. Great post. All right, really good post there. If you guys like that post, hit the like button because that's brilliant. And yeah, that's kind of the age we're in, right? Right? That's the age we're in. Now, just as a little bit of an offshoot, what can go on your highlight video? Well, if your goalie, like Sarah Tasowski, who's like, I'm a big fan of Sarah Tasowski. I hope we see her back. But Sarah Tasowski has probably the best goalie highlight video out there, like recruiting video. And part of it is her dad, Lucas, shooting on her on some burnt out field with bad grass, right? And she's just doing her thing, right? So you can do that. All right. David also writes, another question to ask about clubs is if they have any goalies that are regrading or reclassifying, because your chances go down when you have a kid a year or more older than you coming down to your grade. That is also true. Okay. All right. So how many goalies do you have? What year are they? Are any of them reclassifying? And then what year would they be? Right. What year are they going to be? Daniel Seltzer from Argentina. Buddy, where you been? There's a name out of the past. I haven't seen you in a couple of years, man. This is fantastic. Congratulations on what did Argentina just win in the Olympics? They won the Copa whatever South thing soccer thing. Congrats. Very good. Congratulations. Good to see you, Daniel. Hope all is good. David, again, also need to ask what the philosophy is when the club makes it out of pool play. I.e., do they continue to split halves even in the championship bracket? Nothing worse than splitting halves only to find out you don't get to play in the championship game. Yes. Happened to a goalie this summer in Colorado, led the team to the final. Everybody's really excited, it's like thought, and then that goalie's like benched. Okay. So, these are just kind of questions you want to get your head around before people kind of go all wonky on you. Okay. So in a couple of things that I like to ask is what does your team run for a clear? Right. Or so how about the first one we should start with here is, do you have a goalie coach? But big but there, right? We've all been disappointed by that college kid who comes back to coach goalies who then really can't coach, right? And no disrespect to the college kids. I just remember what I was like as a 20-something-year-old coach, right? There's a difference between having played the position and learning how to articulate how to be better and not just do what you did, but to help a young goalie especially improve, okay? I've got a goalie this year, one of my Lacrosse Goalie University coaching members, where, you're going to learn a gem. So this is my gem theory. Every coach is going to give you at least something, right? One thing. And he learned this little gem from a coach like, hey, before you pick the ball up out of the crease on a clear, look up because the ref doesn't start the count until you got possession, right? And so that was a little gem that he really latched onto, and he was like, yeah, and that empowers your goalie, right? And so that's really kind of cool. But I just want to, everybody's got to understand that if the team says, oh yeah, we have this all American coming out of like Division 1, and they were in the NCAA Final Four, and they're gonna work with your goalie. That sounds exciting, but you're not gonna know probably until you get there if it's actually helpful or not. Okay. Um, um, Daniel from Argentina writes, got back in goal last weekend. Since March of 2020, we weren't playing down here. Yeah, that's right. That was kind of crazy. You Argentinians did COVID pretty good, I think, right? And by good, I mean good in a bad way. So what do you run for clears? Do you have a plan? What do you do for defensive communication? Things like that. Like, what's the philosophy? What's the expectation there for my goalie? Now, in terms of like how good a club is, okay, are they, do they win all their games, right? Or did they lose everything last year? I am not resistant to putting a goalie on a team that's horrible, because a lot of the work that I do with my goalies is we're working on things that the coach of that team doesn't have the time to work on. Right. And this is a resource thing, because people think they wish they had a program that worked on all this sorts of stuff, but you're also not going to pay like $12,000 to have that kind of coaching. Okay. But a lot of the work that I do with my goalies, even at the collegiate level, is we're supplementing things that they're just not able to work on in practice, because they just don't have the manpower to do it. And a lot of times the coaches get really excited because now all of a sudden their goalie shows up. We've been working for a while, and the goalie, understands how to run the D, and call slides, and decide like, okay, who's going to go, who's not going, right? That sort of thing. In addition to the technical ability of stopping balls. All right, that's really good. So, yeah. So Joel writes, we accepted our second string offer solely because the coach is a national championship head coach and was an All-American goalie. Part B was more important for our purposes. Cool. And time will tell if it works out. Right. That's so it looks good on paper. And then I will my last note here for everybody is that even when you ask all these questions and they come back with positive answers, you may still be sold a bill of goods. And the experience you have may end up being a bit of a gong show. They may switch coaches. They may have another goalie show up out of the blue. Goalie may come out of retirement. And you just got to focus on being so damn good. They got to pick you and keep you and all that stuff. So yeah, fingers crossed, Joel, fingers crossed. It'll be good. You're a smart goalie dad. You know what's going on. All right. You guys will be able to navigate those waters if they're good or bad. But it's interesting because you guys are a great example, because you came out of kind of a non-hotbed, moving into an area where there's a lot of lacrosse, a lot of history of lacrosse. Like there's a lot of osmotic coaching. What I mean by is like there's just so much knowledge around that it seeps into everybody without a lot of deliberate work, and so it's going to be a big year. It's going to be a big year for you guys. So that's cool. So any comments or questions on this one? If you guys want to, anything I didn't cover or specific questions you want us to cover, got some good people on here. David, Joel, with Brian asking good stuff. Paul Smith writes, learning and development over time more important than wins and losses. Yeah. That's even my goal, even with my best goalies. Like I said before, like a lot of times I have these really good goalies on really good clubs, and I'm like, you're not in the right place, right? You're not in the right place. Oh, and finally, I would just add, like, if a club situation doesn't work out for you, what do you do, right? Well, taking a break can be a good idea for some people, right? Playing another sport, finding a camp here or two. Although a lot of goalies this year, I would say a lot of my goalies that went off to camps and clinics, which I promote, which I want people to do that, they ended up getting disappointed at those clinics. They really didn't get much out of it. Joe Rose, osmosis is how I got through college. No, what's the term for liver? Filtering got you through college. Not osmosis. Carrie Ann writes, I'm appreciating the feedback about clubs coaching from parents of goalies and other players. I'm curious to see how parent feedback compares to what the club reps say. Yeah, just remember it's a business, right? I've been involved with clubs that have gone, had good coaches, good people, and then gong show results of tournaments, right? You get classified in the wrong, wrong events you're in the wrong tier and it sucks and stuff like that. So, but overall, the day to day, if your kids are playing lacrosse, if your goalies are playing lacrosse, they're seeing balls. If the coach understands progression, your goalie's not getting shelled. If your goalie shows up though and they're protected enough to withstand getting shelled, which is their responsibility, then you're probably going to you probably have a good experience. Okay, paying for balls by the pound. That's my term. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com, check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.